What's fascinating here is that we can actually take that a step further. The Dartmouth Guide introduces a highly analytical tool developed by doctors Karen Ravage and Andrew Chate called the BC Connections.
Oh, this part blew my mind.
Right, because they discovered that this isn't just a loose psychological concept. There is a universal, highly predictable architecture connecting specific categories of beliefs to specific emotional consequences.
It basically acts as a diagnostic tool for your brain. Ravitch and Chade map out that if your underlying belief is that your rights were violated, like a boundary was crossed or you were treated unjustly, the biological consequence is almost universally anger.
It's an aggressive, defensive response, and it maps perfectly across other emotional states too. If your belief centers on a real or perceived loss, a loss of status, a loss of connection, maybe loss of an opportunity, the consequence is sadness or depression.
And what about anxiety?
If the belief is focused on a future threat, anticipating something dangerous or destabilizing on the horizon, the consequence is anxiety or fear.
So you can actually use this to reverse engineer your own reactions in real time. If you are sitting at your desk and suddenly feel a wave of anxiety wash over you, instead of just marinating in the panic, you can stop and ask yourself, wait, what future threat was I just anticipating?
Exactly. You trace the C back to the B.
Right. Or if you feel a sudden flash of guilt, you can trace that back to a hidden belief that you just violated someone else's rights or expectations. It turns emotional regulation into an investigative process rather than just a passive, overwhelming experience.
And that investigation is so necessary because of the sheer volume of data our brains process every day. The back from the Blue clinical module refers to this continuous underlying stream of automatic thoughts.
The internal narrator.
Yes, it operates like background software, a continuous inner dialogue. Some of it is purely neutral and administrative, like I need to get gas on the way home. Some of it is positive or reinforcing, but a significant portion of it, especially under stress, consists of negative automatic thoughts.
Let's ground that in a highly relatable, visceral scenario from the sources. So, you come home exhausted after a brutal 10-hour workday,
You're already drained.
completely drained. You walk through the front door, and your newly cleaned, cream-colored living room carpet is covered in muddy footprints from the dog and your kids.
A nightmare scenario.
Truly. And the background software kicks in instantly. If your automatic thought is, these kids are entirely selfish, they don't care how hard I work, I'm going to ground them for a year, you generate a state of blind rage.
Conversely, if your automatic thought targets your own competence, if you think, I have zero control over this house, I am failing as a parent, this place is always going to be a disaster, the resulting emotion isn't rage, it is despair. It's overwhelming defeat.
But the mud is just mud.
Exactly. The mud is just mud. It is objectively neutral dirt. The internal narrator is the one writing the tragedy and synthesizing the neurochemicals that make you feel awful.
This is exactly where the military application comes into play, and I think it brilliantly shifts the conversation from clinical recovery to elite performance. The Army Resilience Directorate protocol focuses heavily on managing this exact internal narrator.
They don't mess around with this stuff?
No, they don't. They categorize the internal dialogue into automatic self-talk versus strategic self-talk. And they break down the differences across several distinct operational aspects, starting with the nature of the control you have over it.
So automatic self-talk is spontaneous, it's reflexive, it bubbles up from the subconscious without your permission, and because of our evolutionary negativity bias, it almost always defaults to worst-case scenarios.
It's the panic button.
Right. Strategic self-talk, on the other hand, is the deliberate, conscious override of that system. It is highly intentional.
But, and let me push back on this a little bit, switching from automatic to strategic self-talk sounds incredibly taxing. If you are constantly policing your own internal monologue, cross-examining every negative thought that pops up when you see mud on the floor, doesn't that create massive cognitive fatigue? Does the military protocol address how to do this without burning out?
That is the critical friction point, and you're right, it would be exhausting. The Army protocol addresses it directly through the aspect of timing. Automatic self-talk is immediate and reactive. It happens in the chaos of the moment. Strategic self-talk, at least in a military context, is not something you try to invent for the first time while you are under fire.
So you prep it.
Exactly. It is planned and practiced well in advance. Soldiers rehearse their strategic internal dialogue alongside their physical drills. The goal is to train the strategic responses so thoroughly that they eventually become the new automatic baseline when adversity hits.